Good afternoon, Mr. Sealing, Mr. Fenn, councillors, ministry staff, and members of the public. My name is Mishka Balsam, and I'm the CEO and President of the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce. With me today is one of Ontario's finest policy and government relations directors, and we are lucky to have him on our team, Hugo Cheshire. On behalf of our members in the business community, thank you for inviting us to be here to offer our feedback on government reform. The GNCC represents approximately 1,500 members employing 50,000 people and is Niagara's largest business organization. The stakes of this consultation process are high. Democracy isn't easy and progress doesn't happen all at once, but we have the opportunity to do things better, maybe not perfect, but better. Niagara is a community with many strengths. $100 billion of trade flow across the US-Canada border annually. We benefit from being part of the Greater Golden Horseshoe mega region. Our region's agricultural assets allow for a timely supply to a mega market in close proximity. Niagara's international brand attracts 14 million visitors, and our abundant protected natural terrain and conservation areas predispose many to hope that Niagara is the guardian of its natural heritage. And the list goes on. For this consultation, we asked businesses for their input, and over 500 organizations responded. In broad terms, organizations are confident that Niagara's elected leaders are committed to their communities, and municipal services are delivered in accordance with what is likely the norm across Ontario. Issues have arisen primarily when municipal government in Niagara has been required to cooperate with each other or with the region. Economic and social health across Niagara varies, and the ability to provide needed services are inconsistent. It seems harder to build consensus, and this has created gridlock in decision-making. Such services include planning and development, public transportation, affordable housing, economic development, roads, and traffic. Nearly 80% of the survey respondents indicated that government's reform could produce an environment where solutions to the following issues could be addressed. Niagara's population growth. It has remained behind that in Ontario, Canada, and in comparable municipalities. Actual growth has fallen short of projections made in the past 50 years. With a population older than that of Ontario and Canada and getting older, Niagara must broaden its base of working-age people. With 13 local governments, we have been unable to create a unified immigration attraction or youth retention strategy, something much needed by employers across our region. Unemployment. Niagara is experiencing a consistently higher unemployment rate than the rest of the province. We are in need of a strong regional presence to market the entire Niagara area to prospective investors. Although we can build on our strengths of agriculture, manufacturing, and tourism, we must also strive to attract industries in which we are failing to build a presence. To attract the industries and the firms Niagara needs to grow, and to diversify, we need a single complementary economic development strategy and department. Transportation. For 10 years and longer, we have been unable to create a seamless transit system that meets the needs of our citizens and recognizes that people do not live, work, study, or shop in the same places or even in the same municipality. And transportation requirements are not limited to buses. We also need to maximize our connections to the wider world, including via rail, airports, the Welland Canal, and ports on both lakes. We require a unified, efficient, and effective transportation approach. Housing affordability. Recent increases in housing prices have resulted in decreased housing affordability. And when projects are caught up in red tape and burdensome compliance with two levels of government who are sometimes not consistent in their approaches, we can't address it. We need a single-tier planning department. And secondly, with a vacancy rate of less than 1%, we are in an affordable housing crisis. And if we add shelter and food bank usage, it indicates that we are in need of a single unified poverty reduction strategy. The most vulnerable in our society can't afford a gridlock in decision-making. Infrastructure backlogs. Revenue issues or economies of scale have resulted in increases in municipalities' infrastructure backlog. Municipal budgets range from a few million to just under 200 million. On the lower end of the scale are communities where 1% property tax increase would only yield an additional $57,000 per year. these communities would be hard-pressed to deal with the infrastructure backlog, the pressures of climate change on infrastructure, and industry challenges on their own. And we have larger communities that are landlocked with little to no opportunities in new land development. A common Niagara-wide approach is needed to address these issues. Niagara needs to attract new industries and employers and to help those that are here grow their businesses. Without strong job growth, we can't attract a greater population. Without population growth, our aging population will make prosperity difficult to achieve. I have attended a number of town halls on these issues, one hosted by MPP Osterhoff. And what became clear is that we are more than 12 municipalities or 13 municipalities or more than 130 neighborhoods. We're at the same time one. We have common interests when it comes to our economy, social issues, our sustainability, our prosperity. In an era where local governments are expected to do more with less, we encourage this government, you as advisors, to commit to a governance model that allows for better methods of service delivery when it comes to planning, transportation, affordable housing, economic development, roads, and traffic. And lastly, we urge the government to mitigate costs as much as possible and to provide funding and revenue streams to municipalities who will have to bear any costs. With that, I would like to thank you on behalf of Niagara's business community for hearing us today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does your colleague wish to make any comments in addition?
No, I'm more of a policy wonk, so if you have any wonkers questions, I'll be happy to take those.
Too early for that, I think.
So can I ask you what model of governance your membership, that's probably not a fair question, do you have a sense of where your membership is in terms of a governance model?
I think there's great consensus on the services that we need to address and the lack of, and the issues that we have with some of the service delivery. I think that's where the consensus is. What I can say is that the GNCC was formed, our organization was formed 8 years ago. We're one of many Niagara-wide organizations that are actually there to address the issues that are Niagara-wide and to represent that. We have in 8 years grown from a membership of 1,200 to just nearly 1,600 that are there. We're the third largest chamber in Ontario, which speaks of a common voice on issues that are common across municipalities. The consensus that we have is on the service delivery that we need. But I'm going to pass it over to our policy expert.
Certainly, thank you. And essentially what we've focused on here is the important aspects of government where the rubber meets the road, if you will, that the businesses and citizens actually depend upon. And it's the service delivery that I think is the most important outcome. So having outlined the issues that we see, we're then looking for the mode of government that will best let us solve those issues and enhance those deliveries.
Just an observation, having heard some other chambers of commerce before, I think that the themes that are consistent, but because of the breadth of the membership, you're reluctant to take a voice on the model, but your model has to address all these 6 areas, right? Whatever the model is, it's supposed to address all of these 6 areas you've outlined as critical.
Yes.
Maybe I can ask a question about your observation on the need for a Niagara-wide economic development strategy. Can you comment on what ingredients that might have, what kinds of themes it might reflect?
Well, essentially, a single economic development department would have a lot more resources and could specialize. So in Hamilton, there is a single economic development department, and as a result, they have a specialist economic developer for agri-food or for manufacturing, for example. And because of the fragmented nature of Niagara's economic development currently, there's no opportunity for that specialization. And some municipalities may only have one economic development officer, period, which makes it hard for us to attract the business that we want to bring here, especially if we're talking about advanced manufacturing, about enhancing agri-food and so on. And one of the issues that we see, as Mishka pointed out, with the unemployment rate is a key to solving that would be to just bring more employers here. And that's obviously a lot easier when you have a much more effective, single, well-funded, specialized economic development department.
I have a second question. Often when prospective investors are looking at a region, their first point of contact isn't necessarily the municipality, it's often the Chamber of Commerce because it's business-to-business kind of communications. What's been your experience in terms of outreach from non-Ontario prospective employers or investors in terms of Niagara's ability to compete with other regions in Ontario?
In some of the cases, the two areas where we hear and are being contacted most often have to do with the sector of manufacturing, smaller to mid-sized manufacturing, and the other one has to do with tourism. We seem to be known for those two clusters outside of the area, so I'm often being asked about information and expertise as it relates to those two areas. I think in all of the economic clusters that we are known for, I think we're touching them. I think we're touching them in many ways well. I think we have the opportunity to give each one of them more depth so that that expertise grows and we can actually export that expertise across North America. So I think that's where the opportunities are.
And do those prospective investors see Niagara as a region, or do they think in terms of St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, Welland? How do they approach it?
In most cases, what we do is we redirect them to the economic development of the Niagara region because they often have site-specific needs. And I think that we have found that historically the region can help them best. But also we have business coming forward and actually sharing their experience that they've had with one or another economic development department. And sometimes it's harder. It's harder for them the expectations are different. The information provided is different. The process time often is a critical issue of it, and it varies from one municipality to the other.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, who is best positioned to balance off the need to preserve fruit lands versus economic development?
I'd say probably the province because of
I would think so too.
highway. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving us a second. Do you want to respond?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So after a very quick consultation, we think that's probably a question that's actually more in the hands of the province, because a large part of the issue that we see with the tender fruit lands being developed is because those developers that are moving there need access to the highway, which at this point happens to run through the northern part of the peninsula. Building a second highway would obviously be a provincial project, so that is the main thing that I think would move economic development away. So perhaps that answers your question. I think that's the main driver of development in the fruit lands.
Failing a provincial highway, who can best do it?
Failing the province to do it, who can best do it?
Well, I don't think that any municipality in Niagara would have the funds to build a new highway, certainly. So failing the province,
I'm not asking about building the highway, I'm asking about the protections.
Oh, the protections, right.
The region?
Yes,
It has
yeah.
to be the region, actually, in this case.
One last question then. We had a submission earlier about the economic prospects of the southern tier municipalities. The Greater Niagara Chamber covers those as well. Do you have any particular observations about their business communities?
It's a sensitive issue.
Yes.
There seems to be an economic discrepancy between the southern and northern part of our region. So if I pull them together, I think you would see that some of the opportunities in certain areas of Niagara differ from that of others. And I think that some of the communities will find a greater challenge to meet some of the economic needs, the infrastructure needs, and the social needs that are probably expected of them.
If I can just weigh in as well, I think one of the major success stories I've had in recent years in Niagara was the building of the GE plant, which was in Welland and was essentially a cooperative effort between multiple economic development departments. And that was certainly a boon for South Niagara, which it is located in. But I think that also speaks to the need for cooperation or amalgamation of economic development departments, because that's an example of what can be achieved. So in effect, perhaps what might be best for South Niagara would be actually a overarching economic development department that can bring more of that investment in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation.